What's difficult is because of this mentality of church culture of like, I'm hiring you and you're doing this service, they're expecting relational equity, but they don't have relational covenant.
Right.
So they want the equity of, what can you give me as pastors? What can I, this is my next stepping stone to my bigger career position in ministry. And that's not how the kingdom works.
No, that's religion. I think everything rises and falls on your relationship with Christ. Let's face it, we disappoint people and people disappoint us. When you have access into the presence of the Lord, then He can heal those disappointments. It's when you carry them around, when you don't get in His presence, that becomes bitter, it becomes cancerous.
We need as people to learn to classify our betrayal. A negative remark on a social media post should not devastate us.
Welcome back to another episode of Protect the Altar podcast. Today we have very special guests, and these guests are my parents, the pastors of North Palm Church, Mark and Patricia Estes. Mom and Dad, thank you so much for coming on the podcast.
Of course.
Well, it's an honor.
Wow, I'm honored. So I wanted to have you guys on the podcast because I have had to deal with this as a leader. Many other leaders have had to deal with this topic, and this topic is how to deal with betrayal, disappointment, leading teams and people. And you guys have been faithful pastors, and you've been wonderful examples for long period of time, over 40 years, 50 years, however long you want to say. But you've done it very well. And literally, I remember growing up, Stephen, my brother and I would both be like, how do you guys face like this betrayal and these people, in ministry, when the sheep bite the shepherd, yet the shepherd still shepherds those sheep? How do you do that? It's like abusive. How do you deal with that disappointment and that emotional pain and spiritual pain, and then be able to take the high road and love people well? And so a lot of leaders, I feel like, including myself, can learn how to do that a little more like you guys, and how you've handled so many difficult situations. So I would love to get right into it. My first question is, when you face betrayal or disappointment in ministry, what helped you process it without becoming bitter or cynical?
You go first.
Oh, well, all right. Well, I think the thing that you have to do as a leader is guard your own heart. I think everything rises and falls on your relationship with Christ. And if you're genuine and authentic in your relationship with the Lord, that's really where you take your disappointment, and let's face it, we disappoint people and people disappoint us. But when you have access into the presence of the Lord, then He can heal those disappointments. It's when you carry them around, when you don't get in His presence, that it becomes bitter, it becomes cancerous, and can hurt you.
Yes. So, okay, that's really good. But that's really hard because we have different personality types. There are, all sorts of different personality types. And we have, different suffering that goes on. Like, you guys, we dealt with a horrific situation with, Stephen dying and our good friend Opie dying. And I was the only survivor of that accident. You guys walk through that. And then shortly after that, then all of a sudden your pastor friends that you've been doing ministry with for many years start turning on you. And you've been doing ministry with them for so long. How did that look like? Can I know practically, what did you do to get through that as you're dealing with grief? Then you're dealing with betrayal. Like what practically getting in God's presence? I need to know, how do you do that as leaders?
Well, I didn't navigate that all that well, to be honest with you. After Stephen passed in 2004, I looked at a picture that someone brought up recently of the two of us together, Christmas 2004. So it was like 1 year from the time. It was a married couples retreat, and your mother was beautiful. She was movie star skinny, and I was as big as the house. So, I battled depression. I battled, all kind of inner stuff after that for a while, and it took a process of healing for me to get through that.
But
So
you still showed up. That's the
yeah,
thing.
yeah,
Like
I showed up.
you showed up, you still prayed, you still preached,
Yeah,
but it didn't mean you didn't suffer. But
no,
how did
yeah,
you
exactly.
continually take the high road, and how did you deal with it too?
Well, I think those were a lot of different incidences. Sometimes the pain comes from disappointment or shock or trauma. And so with Stephen's death, that was that, an
That was trauma.
accident. Yeah.
Yeah,
It's an accident. And so trauma happens in life. It's a part of the earth right now. And so everybody on earth has to learn to deal with trauma well. One area of discipleship that we work on a lot is that people do not get stuck in their trauma. It's like reliving it over and over and over again. And so you experience that same pain. And so you're still blaming God, or you're blaming somebody or a situation. So you just have to stop and go through your trauma. Grieve if you have to grieve. Grieving is healthy, and you need to do that. But then you mentioned betrayal. Now that's a different type of trauma.
yeah,
And betrayal, we need as people to learn to classify our betrayal. Like a negative remark on a social media post should not devastate us. It should not bring us down to our knees or cause us to lose. There's one of your worship people leaders recently that
Corey Asbury.
yes, that you and I were talking about how he dealt. And
What you're referring to is his social media post where he rates on a scale of like the best versus 1 to 10 of the hate comments that he's received.
Yeah.
And he put in number one something against his dead father.
All right, today I'm going to be blind ranking hate comments I got last week from the whole Forrest Frank debacle. Here we go. Let's get into it. Last and certainly not least, wow, this comment was actually on a video about my dad dying. So there's a little context for you. Now listen to this. He surely didn't do a good job raising a man like you. What a shame. Christian? Question mark, question mark. Yeah, and I'm Spider-Man with a bunch of clown emojis. Strong, very strong from this young lady. Yeah, that's pretty hateful. Definitely going to be number one, easy. So that worked out quite nice. Thank you for all the vitriol. Really appreciate it, guys. Made my day really good. Okay, love you. Bye.
terrible. His
Terrible.
dead father.
Terrible.
Yeah.
But he didn't allow that to like take him out or
Yeah.
anything like that. He made it into a whole post, which I think was great because it kind of held some of those people accountable.
Yeah.
And show like your words matter. All of our words online matter. But it also shows how like when you're in the public, when you're a pastor, when you're a leader, you can't let those things take you out.
Exactly.
So
Yeah.
you would classify a comment online as something that should be so
Outside of being able to really touch us
Yeah, it
emotionally.
really should be insignificant.
We're going to have to learn to classify betrayal.
So if someone does feel like emotionally hurt by a post that, maybe their church member makes or something about them, or, or if it's a general comment from someone they don't even know, maybe their church is growing and then people are writing Google reviews against their church or whatever it is, what should they feel? And if it bothers them, what should they do?
Get off Facebook. Get off social media.
Get
I think it has
You
to
know-
do with who's doing the comment.
Yeah.
If it's someone that just out there, who cares?
Yeah, we're classifying people that we don't even know. They're probably living in their mom's basement, and their opinion is not even a weighted opinion.
Yeah.
We have to learn to weight things.
Yeah.
What is the weight of this? Who's giving this? So if
Right.
it's somebody close to me that's in relationship with me and that's in the assignment of God with me,
That's
I'm
it.
going to listen to that a little bit
Yeah.
differently. And so I think that too many people are just being emotionally traumatized and offended because of all this stuff out there, all these voices, all the noise. So you're going to have to learn to navigate it or get off of it. The
Right.
Bible talks about pluck it out, get rid of it, So we have to manage those things. And that's the same thing that we've had to do with betrayal. So you talked about ministers turning against us. It was when we felt God calling us to leave a denomination to follow a directive God had given us. And they felt betrayed. See, their betrayal, what they were feeling is like we betrayed this denomination. One of them even told us, one of our overseers said, "We made you. We made you who you are. How dare you come against us?" So they were themselves. I feel like it was false betrayal that they were feeling, but they were feeling
Because
betrayed.
maybe their allegiance was more to the denomination than the kingdom. And the king had an assignment for you guys outside of what
That's
they
it.
liked.
Yeah.
So their allegiance was a little off. So they
Yeah.
had false betrayal. So then they're dealing with their own disappointment that they made you the superstar pastors that you are.
Well, I wouldn't say superstar.
But
At
it was
all, even-
enough. They loved us
especially back
enough that
then.
they had that much
He said,
energy
especially
for
back
us.
then.
And so we're following what we felt God was telling us, and they felt a betrayal in that. And so we all sometimes, I think, to deal is just to step back a moment and think
And look at it objectively.
from the other person's perspective.
Yeah, and really, as I was doing my devotions this morning, there was a scripture in Matthew 5 that really speaks to this. It's where Jesus said, "Therefore, if you're presenting your offering at the altar and there remember that your brother has something against you, leave your offering there at the altar and go first be reconciled to your brother, and then come and present your offering." And I think that's the thing. You know, you have to keep perspective and keep the main thing. And there is a point in the cross. You know, the vertical beam. We're reconciled to God, and thank the Lord for that. But then the horizontal beam is man to man. And there comes a point where the horizontal and the vertical intersect. And so your relationship with your brothers can actually impede your reconciliation to God. And so if there's something in your heart, then you leave it and you try to make restoration, you know. And I think whether it's a denomination or it's people or people in ministry or it's friendships or whatever, if it becomes an impediment between you and God, if it becomes a stumbling block, then you need to deal with it. You need to take it to the cross, be reconciled to your brother, and try to make things right and go on to try to live at peace with all men. And sometimes it's almost impossible.
And if you
That,
try
yeah.
to reconcile and they don't want to reconcile,
Yeah.
you have to really wash your hands and move on.
Exactly.
But not carry bitterness out of that.
Yeah, that's the thing, and that's what my mom. I love my mom. She was a wonderful
Yeah.
mother. I always felt loved by her. And she
You were
was
her
funny.
superstar.
I was the perfect child.
He was the baby of the
Yeah.
family, and
Well,
He could do no wrong.
oh yeah,
She
I
did.
heard that
Yeah,
ever since
I
we
have
were
to
married.
remind my brother and sister from time to time that I was the perfect child. But she had offenses and hurts that went back to her childhood.
Wow.
And when my dad passed, I would call her every day, and we would end up working through pains from 50 years ago.
When you
Either
were doing
church-
inner healing to your mom.
yeah, sozo. Didn't even know what sozo was. But it could be church trauma, church hurt. It could
Family
be sheep
trauma.
bites. It could be family trauma. It
yeah.
could be her niece making fun of them on the way to school while they were walking to school in Minnesota from back in the 1930s.
Wow.
Yeah, but still carrying that trauma.
That's
or
a
it could
talent.
be stuff that my dad did. My dad was a complete opposite of her. He loved people and he could talk to anybody, but she was not that. She was a homebody, but she had deep hurts that
And
went
allowed
inside.
bitterness.
Yeah, and it robbed her of so much joy that she could have had. And that I'm kind of wired like that, to be honest.
You have the talent to remember something
I
from
can
30
remember
years
it
ago.
really well. Yeah, I can. But I've had to learn how to let that go.
Yeah.
I think
So how did you do that? Because that's the part.
I have to constantly work on it.
I think sometimes we need to learn to laugh at things. So, for instance, I could have been offended with Mark's mom and our son Stephen many times, but like for instance, she would call and we would answer the phone, one of us, either Stephen or
That was
myself.
back when we had landlines.
Yeah,
There were no cell phones.
right there tied to the wall with the cord. She would say hello. We'd say hello, and she'd say, "Is Mark there?"
Yeah.
And if Mark was not there, she didn't have anything else to say. Who are we?
Okay,
We're just
well,
the answering people.
there you go.
And so Stephen would say, "It's so rude. She could just at least ask how we're doing. And I would laugh. I said, "Oh, but she has to see this precious little baby
Haters
Mark."
gonna hate.
And we turned it to laughter.
Right, you made it something-
instead of like
Yeah.
letting it become a seed in our heart.
Right.
And so I think with other things like that, so if we're looking for specific ways to be successful when we're hurt, is acknowledge I'm hurt. No,
Yes.
don't pretend like I'm not hurt, everything's fine. Just say
Yeah,
that
that's
hurt me.
hypocrisy.
Yeah, I'm disappointed. I'm offended. Don't stay offended.
Right.
Work on that. There's so many books on how to do that.
John
but,
Bevere.
yeah,
Bait of
Patricia
Satan.
King. Yeah, it's so much.
Yeah, unoffendable heart.
And so we just have to do the work. So I think acknowledge. If we can, laugh about it, let it go. If one of our worship people did something, or somebody gave a Google review like, boy, that wasn't any good or whatever.
Right.
Even I think it's funny that people do these reviews of churches on Yelp or
Yeah.
Google review, all
As
these
if
kind
it's
of
a
things.
restaurant.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And, that goes back to consumer mentality.
Right.
Or
Exactly,
people
yeah.
thinking your opinion's really important when we don't.
Exactly, because church is, it's almost like we're a community of believers, right? And we've chosen to grow together. God has this design for his church to do this in this way. So then it's almost like, okay, we're building this house together. And then this visitor comes in and they start ridiculing the kitchen and everything about the house.
Move the couch. We don't like
It's
it
like,
there.
but they have no authority. They don't have any buy-in to this community.
They've not made
that's
any
not how church-
contribution.
Yeah,
Right.
that's not how church is supposed to be. We're supposed to be contributing together. We're supposed to be growing together. We're supposed to be edifying one another. This is not consumer where they just come in, you entertain me and I leave as long as, the entertainment satisfies my needs.
Well, it's
So
just
what
a
we-
sign of immaturity.
Yeah.
When someone comes in and their opinion is so weighted.
It's culture. Culture has taught, like,
Right.
I call them hit and runs because there's no responsibility of conversation. So they just, come in and hit and run and they don't want to talk about it. It's not biblical. Don't do it. And so these are the things that we've got to understand. So laugh about it. We laugh about it.
Yeah.
Try to put it in categories, Okay, we can just laugh about this. But there's some things that hit close.
Oh, yeah.
And they hurt.
And they hurt.
And those are the people.
How do you deal with that?
Right.
That's the one.
And so first of all, this is how I think about it, and I even teach about this, is if you could look at concentric circles in your mind and put in the middle God. And that's what Jesus did. I don't do anything my Father doesn't do. I don't say anything he doesn't do. If we can center ourselves with God, that's what you're talking about. Keep going into his presence because that's where we get power to forgive. That's where we get power to get over our trauma.
That's good.
And go into the presence of God. But then there's this circle of people, and they can affect us emotionally.
More
and
than
for
anybody.
Jesus, I would put in that Peter, James, and John, he brought them in.
His mother.
Yeah, and they disappointed him. They were sleeping when he was in trauma, right? And his mother, I'd put
Peter
I would put,
denied him.
think about it.
3
and
times.
then I would put Mary and Martha and Lazarus because he called them their friends. He knew he was going to raise him from the dead, but he still
Yeah, he
wept.
wept, yeah.
So there was something in that circle or people that we have to be careful who we give that much of power
heart.
to affect us.
Yeah.
And that's where people are messing up.
Yeah.
So, but let's say someone in that close circle does betray a leader and they have to still get up and they got to still lead worship. They still got to lead and they got to do it from a good place, right? And you talked about it not impeding your relationship with God, right? But let's say they're so hurt, but they still got to go. What do they do?
You be faithful.
Yeah.
You be
It's
faithful.
just
If
be
God
faithful.
called you, then your obligation is to God. If you allow your hurt to take you out, you become God. And you don't make a good God.
That's good.
So keep your feet grounded. Do what you're called to do. Focus on your calling, not on everyone's likes, not on everyone's approval.
Right.
If you get the approval from the Father, then you don't need any other approval.
That's
His
good.
is the approval that makes a difference.
So even when you guys were struggling with friends betraying you, in the midst still grieving your son, and that's why I brought those back up, because like it was like one hit after the next after the next, and it was just like bearing false witness against you guys, all of these things that are in the Bible that ministers should know not to do, and they were doing, but yet you guys were still faithful and you were still getting up. That's probably why I'm serving the Lord, because I saw it so authentically, and you guys not hypocritically. So I saw, even in your suffering, even in your grief, you guys were still showing up and you were still leading. How did that not affect your leadership? Like how was, did you feel the grace of God in that season, like to be able to carry that cross and to do it well? Did you feel his closeness? Like what was the empowerment in that moment?
I think for us is that we communicated, and I
Y'all
think,
suffered together.
but we didn't suffer and lament together.
Right.
And I think that's what too many people do, is we get into this place where we just find
Victims.
that suffering victim
Yeah.
person, and you stay as
You
victims.
become attached.
Right.
Yeah.
And so what we did
Trauma
was
bonded.
we began
Yeah, trauma bonded. yeah.
exactly. But what we began to do is we looked at the people who were with us. So that's what
That's good.
so many people lose out on is, yeah, you're going to have it if you're in life. It doesn't matter if it's in ministry, if you're a pastor, if you're a worship leader, if you're a doctor, if you are a housewife, whatever, you're going to have betrayal. You're going to have pain as a Christian. And so then what do? What you have to decide is, okay, I'm going to deal with this. I know I have to, but I'm not going to let it consume me. It's not my breakfast, my lunch, my dinner, and my nighttime snack. I'm just not going to stay there. I'm going to concentrate on the things that the people that are with me, the faithful people, and
Yeah.
those are the things that we have to. That's what we really have to remember.
That's
it's
good.
what will empower you.
Yeah, and the amazing thing about that is when 2004 and the next few years were probably the most productive years in bringing in our spiritual sons and daughters.
Yes.
Wow.
We lost a son, but we gained dozens of spiritual sons and daughters. That was the period that Rice came in, that Jean and
yeah.
Sylvia came in, Alex and Jennifer. So many of the leaders today that really are family. They're really they're our kids. That's when they came in. So and it amazes me that in the hell of life, God can bring about such goodness. But
That is beautiful.
But it's really what David said in Psalm 23 that we have to keep focused on. He said, "Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death," and the emphasis is not on the valley of the shadow; it's that I'm walking through it. I'm not going to live here. It may be a long valley, but I am not going to live. I'm passing through. Not
I'm
going
not
to
building
camp
my
out
house
there.
here.
Yeah.
That's good.
And so
That's
many
good.
people build their house there. So they're marked as a victim the rest of their
Yeah.
life.
Yeah.
And they're not seeing. So if you will take in, the scripture gives us all these antidotes. Think on these things.
Yeah.
Right.
So that is an indicator that we can control our mind and
Yeah.
what we think
Yeah.
about. And so that's what I'll tell a lot of people. They're telling me this. I said, I'm sorry that happened to you, but tell me about the faithful people. Tell me about the victories.
Yeah.
And if we
Yes.
can live in that, we'll find lift.
Yeah.
And, there's so many things that's why I think laughter is a medicine.
Absolutely.
And, you've got the psychology that your brain doesn't know if your smile is fake or real. So just walk around smiling
That's
when you feel
right.
like crying, and there's something that begins to happen.
Yeah.
And it's just a choice. It all
Yeah.
goes down to a choice.
Yeah.
Are you going to cry? Yes, you're going to cry. I think I'm most disappointed when I see people that really are called to the assignment with us and that they choose a lesser thing.
Yeah.
That's the thing that bothers me
The
the
thing
most.
of the earth,
Yeah.
whether it's
Yeah.
money or business.
Or their offense or
Or their
their
family.
situation or whatever it is, that they choose something lesser. And for me, that's my biggest
Yeah,
disappointment.
that's tough.
Because, truly, if I lose a friend, it's painful, but God can give me so many more friends. But truly, when I see people derail their lives
Yeah.
and not reach the fullness of what God has because they have an opinion, they have a concept, they have an influence, they have a desire, whatever
Yeah.
it is, and they trade, and it goes back to a bowl of soup.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, their opinion becomes more weighty than the relationship or even word. You really go back to David when he had come back from a raid and the camp, the city had been like gone, taken. All their
Decimated.
possessions, all their wives, all their children gone, taken as slaves. And there's mutiny. His men are wanting to stone him. But the Bible says, he tells the priest, get the prayer shawl, and he covered himself in prayer. And the Bible says he encouraged himself in the Lord.
Yeah.
And that's really what it is.
He
You
encouraged himself in the Lord.
you can live through hell as long as you're with God.
Yeah.
Keep yourself grounded, stay focused
His
in
word.
prayer. And then what God did was he gave him direction. So when you're going through, God tells you how to get through.
That's good. That's
And-
good.
and
The shortest way
then
through the
end.
valley.
Yeah.
Give me the shortcut.
That's right.
But the end of the story is it wasn't long. He got back his wife. He got back his kids. Everyone got back everything
Right.
that they lost and then some.
Right. They plundered. That's good. Okay. So looking back, is there any lesson that you wish maybe you would have learned sooner or applied sooner as a leader and that could benefit worship leaders and they're walking through betrayals or they're walking through disappointment in relationships? Is there anything that you're like, well, I wish I would have done this differently or wish I'd learned this quicker? Anything that comes to your mind?
Well, for me, I went through depression way too long. Actually, Kent Henry, one of the grandfathers of modern worship. I mean, Kent made a huge impact on Christian music. But he came and he noticed what I was going through. It was kind of obvious, And so he gave me an assignment that I had to actually lead worship. And that was torture.
And you never done that before. So some people may know you play guitar, but it's to the audience of yourself and God
Yeah.
and maybe the dog.
Yeah.
But like
yeah, he gets
that's-
punished. That's
yes,
true.
that's
Bo has
like-
to listen.
But so it was never something that you just were like, I'm going to be a worship leader. I'm a singer.
No,
You didn't
exactly.
feel
But
like
I
that.
had to do that for like an hour and a half every Tuesday with the staff.
Wow.
So they got punished as well.
Wow.
No, we didn't. It was good.
No,
But
they loved it.
But let's be honest. But anyway,
Alex still talks about some of those songs, so he loves it.
But it forced me to practice. It forced me to get in the presence. It forced me
Sing
to
the word.
focus on the worship. It forced me to get out of myself. And
That's
I think
good.
that's the thing, when you can get out of yourself.
Quicker.
Yeah. And that was after like 7 years I had been battling that. But that really opened the door for me to be able to find freedom. But, it just goes back to getting in the presence, and sometimes listening and doing the hard thing.
For me, I think what I would have learned to do sooner and what I do now is to try to love well. So if they've hurt me, it's easy to want to return hurt with hurt, right?
Or be like, you're dead to me.
yeah.
That's my favorite.
Off with the head. But
Dead to me.
but I increase praying for that person. And
Yeah.
I just will not take a position to want to see that person in ruin or hurt like our
Right, it's
natural
demonic.
flesh does,
Yeah. Yeah,
that's-
right?
yeah.
And so I think just really intentionally praying, blessing over
Blessing
that
your
person.
enemy.
Bless well, I'm not saying enemy, but the person that hurt you,
David
bless
called
them.
enemies.
Yeah.
And just remember that it's not the end of the world. So those two things, just really quickly start praying for that person. It's not your natural inclination, but Holy Spirit will give you the strength. And the next thing is just remember, this is just a moment. The next moment coming is going to be full of faithful people. The next moment is going to be full of laughter. So cry this moment. And Jesus had it. He's on the cross. Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. Just getting that position.
Yeah, that's good.
That's good. That's good. And one thing that you're always teaching us is like when someone, a lot of times it's miscommunication. And so, like, when someone says something and maybe we interpret it the wrong way, you're always teaching us, like, look at the most positive possible reason they said that, or maybe reason they did that. Maybe, look from whether it's their point of view or whether it's like they didn't even, like, assume they didn't mean what you think they meant. Like, sometimes we jump to assumptions that they're meaning it badly. And
they have no idea.
And they have no idea. They really didn't mean it like anything. And so that's something that you're always teaching us is like, look at it in the most positive light, that they love you. They love you. They don't hate you. And so, and that's not always true. Sometimes people do have
No,
bad
but it's
intentions.
called the Mr. Magoo
Mr.
formula. Yeah, just go through. It's falling around, whatever. But you
you're
just
keep
don't
driving.
even ignore it. You're just moving
so
on.
oblivious.
And if you believe that they meant it for your good, you're going to feel better. And if there's something wrong with them, God will deal with them.
God will deal with
I mean, that's really true in marriage when you're having conflict, realizing, wait a minute, stop. Nobody wants me to succeed more than Patricia.
Right.
Nobody loves me more than her. Nobody wants to help me more than her. Maybe I need to listen.
Maybe I need the help.
Yeah.
That's good. Well, this next segment we have today is Praise or Pass. So we want to watch a viral clip on the internet and we want to either praise it or pass it. And I want to get y'all's take on it.
Okay.
Lucifer, who was responsible for worship. The scripture says his body was made out of musical instruments and pipes, who became your adversary, the devil and Satan, who still loves music, by the way. Oh, you never realize when you listen to certain things why it make you feel angry, lustful. You feel like you want to commit murder.
So what do you guys think about that clip?
Well, I think that was praise. That was true.
Praise. We're not going to pass that. You agree with that?
I agree.
Yeah.
I think we have to take some responsibility to know what's powerful. And so I'm 100 with that.
Absolutely. What you listen to becomes a part of you, and it does. Music stirs you. And that's the responsibility of the worship leader to make sure that the people are stirred in a godly way and drawn into the presence as opposed to like stirring up the flesh.
Yeah.
And that's keeping the focus on what it's all about.
Yeah, that's good.
It's not about my performance. It's about his presence.
That's right.
And I think for worship leaders that we have to keep it pure because, God can still use us and people be blessed, but him not pleased with us.
Yeah.
And we can be judged on that.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's good. And it's almost like, I know a lot of worship leaders that are just like, well, I mean, I like listening to all types of music and, it could be very, all types of carnal things. And I think the discernment thing comes in where we know like what's stirring us. Like if it's something that's giving us joy and hope, and then that's amazing. But if it's something that's stirring our depression or it's stirring, you know what I mean?
That's what you feed yourself.
Yeah.
If you're feeding yourself junk, then your body's going to reflect that.
Yeah.
So you have to feed your spirit, man, the good stuff. And so I'm very careful who I read behind, who I listen to, because I know it's going to bring fruit.
Yeah.
And if I put bad seed in, it's going to produce bad fruit. It's common sense.
That's good. On that note, let's go to our next segment, which is frequently asked questions. You guys are the lead pastors of our church, and something that I think a lot of worship teams struggle with, and we've gotten questions on, is how to align with like the vision of the pastors, and like sometimes they're newer relationships between the worship leader and the pastor. So it's like, what what can we do if we don't fully understand the pastor's direction for worship?
Make an appointment with the pastor. I think that, of course, we are serving, a worship leader is serving the Lord, but they are being positioned to serve the Lord under the leadership of a church or a leader. If they can align to that vision and to that leader, they don't need to try to have this overthrow or a negative or carnal response to that. They need to sit down and say, I either don't understand this or what's going on, but they need to fully understand what is the vision of the house. And
Yeah.
then they work to support that.
Yeah, and really our model is a little bit different from like a lot of church models, because we don't go out looking for worship leaders, music ministers, youth ministers, whatever. All of our leadership has been
Homegrown.
homegrown. And so in order to have the vision of the mother and father, it's not hard for a son or daughter, a daughter to have
That's
the vision
good.
of the
That's
house.
good.
And Rice, even though Tim is not my
Yeah.
biological son, he is in every way my son.
Right.
So it's not difficult for him to have the heart,
vision.
the vision of
Yeah.
the house. And really where you see if someone is a son or daughter isn't on the field when it's attaboy, way to go, good job. It's when you have to call their hand and you have to, what do you really
Challenge.
mean by that?
Yeah.
Why'd you do that? When you have to bring discipline in, then you see the heart if it's a son or daughter. Now, and that's
That's good.
against employee and employer
That's
mentality.
good.
And a lot of churches, and I'm not hating on them, it's just a different model. It's an employee-employer thing,
And that's really
that just-
hard for
yeah.
worship leaders, because I've heard worship leaders talk about how they feel insecure when their pastors don't give them the attaboys. When after the worship set, they don't hear like that they did a good job, and then
you
they
need
feel
to get your attaboys from Jesus.
exactly. But if it's the employer
But at
versus
the same
employee,
time,
Yeah.
exactly. At the same time, I think if we don't want to say hirelings because
Right.
that's a negative connotation, but let's say that there's somebody that's hired for a position.
Yeah.
They need to work as the senior leaders and the worship leaders or other staff members, that we become this model of family.
Yeah.
Mothers, fathers, sons, and daughters. They have to
Exactly.
work at that.
Yeah.
And
And it is work.
yeah, and we have processes where people move in and they come in and that they get to know our DNA and all, and that they can
Contribute for a
aspire,
season and
yeah,
then go.
and or no, I'm talking about that they can become a part of a son
come
or
apart.
daughter.
Right.
Maybe they weren't homegrown,
Yeah.
but they were added later on, and so they're building their relational equity and their
Yes.
to be a
Yeah.
son or to be a daughter. And I think that's what's difficult
time.
is there, because of this mentality of church culture of like, I'm hiring you and you're doing this service, and then the worship leader feels all these things. What can end up happening is they come in and they're expecting relational equity, but they don't have relational covenant.
Right.
So they want the equity of, what can you give me as pastors? What can I, this is my next stepping stone to my bigger career position in ministry. And so then they do this, and
Yeah.
then they're that's not how the kingdom works.
No,
it's
that's
not
religion.
how family works.
That's exactly how religion works.
It's
Each
like-
position is a stepping
it's how
stone to
business
a
works,
better
too.
one. Well, true.
so they're
Yeah.
running it as corporations.
Yeah.
And so if you're walking into a corporate situation, you work it as a corporate situation. So if I am in corporate world and I hire an employee, I'm not expecting them to be
To be a
my
daughter.
son and daughter. And so you have to know where you are to be successful. So if I'm going in as a corporate hire, even in worship, then I have to ask, well, then lay out my expectations. And then when are my reviews? Who gives me the feedback? And what are going to be the measurements?
So it's almost like if God's called you there, whether you
Yeah.
like it or not,
You serve
treat
in
it
that.
like that.
Yes, and you serve in the structure that you're in. And we see this over in the Bible. You know, we saw that with Joseph.
Joseph, yeah.
Yeah, and so he could have cried because he wasn't in his familiar structure, And it was even against his will, but he understood the structure and he took on a spirit of excellence. And so I think worship leaders, we love people that are homegrown. We love people who God sends, either through salvation or that they move here or they know that this is their God assignment. And we have a
Yeah.
process where they learn our DNA and
Exactly.
they become sons and daughters of the house. And that's what we're building here as family.
Yeah.
However, if you're not in that situation,
And
then
there are a
you
lot
have
that
to know,
aren't.
right?
Yeah.
Then know where you are, and for the senior leaders, make it clear.
Make it clear,
You
but
know.
also for the worship leaders, don't get your whole identity off of your pastor giving you validation. It really does have to come from the Lord and knowing that you're doing the best you can do and serving within that structure. But I do believe God is calling us to a better way. And I feel like the model that you guys have chased after for the last 30 years and, as well as the worship entire community at this church has chased after is that mother-daughter, is that father-son, that family relational covenant relationship, kind of like Jesus and his disciples, and not like a business relationship, a transactional. What can you give me and I'll give you? And I think
Right.
the Lord is calling the worship movement entirely to go from the business model to the early church model back
Right.
to, in community, in covenant relationship.
Well, in the early church model and in the family model, it's messy. That's the thing. That's why some people, some pastors will opt for the employer-employee
So they don't have to
relationship
deal with
so they don't have to get messy.
betrayal and bitterness.
Well, yeah, and it keeps it more transactional
Yeah.
instead of relational.
Exactly.
But I do think
'Cause
the
it
Lord is
costs.
calling us to higher
Yeah.
places, and there's always a beginning, and then we should be growing as the people of God. And I think that
Yeah.
there's an emergence of covenant relationships coming back.
Well,
Yeah.
Malachi talked about, that there would be this time that the hearts of the children would be turned to their fathers and the hearts of the fathers would be turned to the children. And
That's good.
I think that's really where significance comes from, when we can have relational equity instead of transactional gain.
That's good. That's really good. Well, I think this episode was extremely helpful, and I pray that it helped all the worship leaders and people tuning in. Please make sure that you share this with somebody who you may know needs to hear this. And like, subscribe, comment. We need all the help we can get to get this message that worship leaders need and worship teams need out. So thank you, Mom and Dad, for coming on.
Thank you.
And make sure you guys tune in for the next episode of Protect the Altar podcast.